Well, good morning, everybody. So it's been a busy week, not just at the cathedral, but really within our Catholic community. Of course, we had the wake and the funeral for Bishop Coleman, the funeral being on Friday. Yesterday, we had the ordination of a new priest for our diocese. And at one point during the ordination, after he's been ordained, all the priests come forward for what they call the kiss of peace. We kind of embrace him and welcome him into the brotherhood of the presbyterate. And I went up and I said, "Brian, congratulations, get to work." Fortunately, he is eager to do just that. And he'll be starting, I think, in 2 weeks in his new assignment, in his new life as a priest. This evening happens to be occurring at the cathedral, but we also have the celebration of confirmation for many of our young people from our Catholic community, and Holy Trinity is joining us as well. We have 61 young people being confirmed tonight by Bishop D'Acunha. And then in just a few days, right here, Thursday at 5:30, we gather with our St. Stanislaus school community for the graduation of our 8th graders as they begin an exciting new part of their life as they prepare to begin high school next year. All of these significant celebrations, the sadness of a funeral, the joy of an ordination and a graduation and a confirmation, all of these are happening within the celebration of Mass, the celebration of the Eucharist, portraying to us a truth that the Second Vatican Council echoes, that the Eucharist is the source and summit of the Christian life. It's a source of our strength in times of sadness, like the loss of a loved one. It's our source of strength in witnessing and living the faith, as an ordination or the confirmation reminds us of. It's a celebration of the family of faith gathering together to celebrate with one another, such as a graduation. That in these special moments in life, don't we want to celebrate with our loved ones? These special moments of life, Jesus himself celebrates that with us in a most special way through the Eucharist. It's interesting, yesterday, June 1st, is the memorial of Saint Justin, who lived in the 1st century. He and his companions were beheaded for doing what we're doing right now, celebrating the Eucharist, giving praise and worship to our God, celebrating the resurrection and what it means for us to live as Christian disciples. Chances are we'll end this day with our head attached to our shoulders, I'm sure. Right? We don't live in that same reality of being martyred for our faith. It was interesting, at one point in the account of the martyrdom of Justin and his companions, the magistrate or whoever it was that was pronouncing sentence told them, if you offer burnt offerings to the gods, everything will be fine. If you refuse to offer burnt offerings to the gods, you'll be executed. And the response of Justin and his companions was, do what you will. We are Christians, and we do not offer sacrifice to idols. Didn't go over very well with the magistrate. The thing is, the reality is, and we find this in the scriptures, even the Old Testament, that worship is not just something that we do, just not Sunday morning we've got to do these actions, this ritual, right? Worship connects us to the covenant with God. A covenant. It's more than a contract. It's even more than a promise. A covenant binds us to God in a unique relationship that cannot be broken. And we hear in the first reading today one of those covenants the Lord establishes with Moses and people of Israel, right? And it's marked by an act of worship in praise, a ritual to help the people understand the covenant that they entered into. That meant not just to give an intellectual assent to it, but it's a covenant that's meant to be lived each and every day. It's part of who they are. And that whenever they gather in praise and worship, it's to reconnect them to that covenant. And as Old Testament history continues up until the new covenant of Jesus, that covenant just deepens in the bond between the people and God. So false worship, empty worship for the sake of just going through the motions, is the equivalent of a fake promise, of living untruthfully, of living a lie. Hence, I couldn't help, it sounds so familiar. The Justin and his companions, do what you will. We as Christians, we do not offer sacrifice to idols. Kind of have a similar ring to the voice of the people in the first reading today. We'll do everything that the Lord has told us to do. Because of that bond we have with him, to be true to ourselves and true to God, we can't imagine doing anything else. In the case of Justin and his companions, in the face of threats and violence and death, they still have the courage to be true to who they were, to be true to their covenant promises to the Lord, to be true to God himself. And what gives them that strength and that courage to persevere, even in the face of their own death, is the love they have for God that's marked by that covenant. Love of God. Not love of a philosophy, not love of a philosophical position, but a very real love of heart and mind, soul, and being. Excuse me. But it's not just martyrs, right, that have lived out this love, that have found courage and strength to witness to this love. Let's fast forward a couple thousand years. Just announced a few weeks ago that Blessed Carlo Acutis is going to be canonized in the next year. If you don't remember, Blessed Carlo died as a 15-year-old back in 2007. Right. Well, it's 27. 2007. Acutis died at the age of 15. Your typical average 15-year-old. In fact, there's been jokes that perhaps a first-class relic of Carlo Acutis will actually be his video game controller from his Xbox. He was a big video game person. As a boy, he was even a Pokemon person. And he loved soccer. Thing is, Carlo wasn't martyred. He didn't found a monastery. He didn't create a worldwide church movement. What he's known for is very simply loving God. That's it. He's quoted as saying one time that the more we receive the Eucharist, the more we become like Jesus. Huge soccer fan, huge video game fan, but also a huge fan of Mass. Not just on Sunday. If he could make it during the week, he tried to as much as he could. To receive the Eucharist, to be with Jesus, to allow himself to fall in love with Jesus. And Carlo lived what he worshipped. In all the descriptions, in the normal 15-year-old daily activities, he reached out to his friends who are struggling, who are even suffering. He reached out to friends whose parents who were dealing with the parents of marriage breaking up. Friends who are struggling in their own relationships with others. Reaching out and being a friend to the kid who was picked on, to those who are lonely. He was very simply kind and loving to all in the ordinary daily life. To a certain extent, it's kind of sad that living that way is such an inspiration in our world, right? Meaning you don't find that very often. And yet we're all called to live exactly that way. Carlo will be canonized a saint for living out the call that began at his baptism. For very simply living as another Christ in the ordinariness of life. And Carlo reminds each of us that all of us gathered here today as Christian disciples are called to be saints. That's what the Christian faith is all about. Thomas Merton wrote, if we are called by God to holiness of life, and if holiness is beyond our natural power to achieve, which it certainly is, he says, then it follows that God himself must give us the light, the strength, and the courage to fulfill the task he requires of us. He says he will certainly give us the grace we need. If we do not become saints, Merton writes, it is because we do not avail ourselves of this gift. Holiness isn't something just for the monks or the nuns or the priests or the religious or those who spend their days in prayer. It's achieved when we seek to live life according to God's word and the vocation he's called each of us to, seeking to know him and to love him better. To be a saint is simply to be human, living as the image and likeness of God. That's what Merton's telling us. That's what the Gospels are telling us. The saint is the one who accepts their humanity, the strengths and the weaknesses, confident the Lord makes himself present in our moments of vulnerability and our moments of glory. To be a saint means to take the time to accept who we are, a mom or a dad, a husband or a wife, a son or a daughter. To be a saint means to recognize Christ present and working in the day-to-day of ordinary life. To be a saint is to see holiness and sanctity in the ordinary, and to respond to Christ present in those around us at a particular moment. The Eucharist, the gift of the Lord's body and blood given to us, helps us to work towards that goal of becoming saints. Our reception of the Eucharist binds the Lord to us physically in the most intimate union possible. When we receive the Lord in communion, he can't be separated from us, and we can't be separated from him. My friends, as our church celebrates this feast of the body and blood of Christ this weekend, we're reminded that each of us here are called to be saints, a process that begins and continues right now. And how do we become saints? We love God, we love others, and we allow God to love us. Benedict XVI called the Eucharist a sacrament of charity. It's how we encounter the divine love and how we're able to recognize the Lord's love each and every day. It's what gives us the strength we need to live this love throughout the week.